Could everyone go ahead and ask their parents who the last person they saw was?
The last person was Gabby.
Yeah, Gabby.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and pick up after Mrs. Pontier.
We're back in our horse training, like right now.
Well, Emily Sparks, your prayers were not wasted. I owe whatever I was in life to your love that would not give me up, to your hope that still saw me as good. Dear Emily Sparks, let me tell you the story. I passed the effect of my father and mother. The miller's daughter made me trouble, and I went out into the world, facing every peril known, of love, of woman, and joy of life. One night, in the Rue de Rivoli, I was with the black-eyed coquette, and the tears started flooding in. She thought they were amorous tears, for thought of her conquest over me. In truth, I was over 3,000 miles away, back in the days when you taught me in Spoon River. And no more could you love me, nor speak to me, nor write me letters. Your eternal silence spoke instead. And the black-eyed coquette took the tears for hers, and the deceiving kisses I gave her. But from that hour, I had a new vision. Dear Emily Sparks.
Where is my boy? My boy in what far part of the world? The boy I loved best of all in school. I, the teacher, the old maid, the virgin heart, who made them all my children. Did I know my boy aright, thinking of him as a spirit of flame, active, ever aspiring? Oh boy, boy for whom I prayed and prayed in many a watchful hour at night. Do you remember the letter I wrote you of the beautiful love of Christ? And whether you ever took it or not, my boy, wherever you are, work for your soul's sake, that all the clay of you, all the dross of you, may yield to the fire of you, till the fire is nothing but light, nothing but light.
I would have been as great as George Eliot, but for an untoward fate. For look at the photograph of me made by Penniwit, chin resting on hand and deep set eyes, grey too, and far-searching. But there was the old problem. Should it be celibacy, matrimony, or unchastity? Then John Slack, the rich druggist, wooed me, luring me with the promise of leisure for my novel. And I married him, giving birth to 8 children, and I had no time to write. It was all over for me anyway when I ran the needle through my hand while washing the baby's things and died from lockjaw. An ironical death. Hear me, ambitious souls. Sex is the curse of life.
I was the first fruits of the Battle of Missionary Ridge. When I felt the bullet enter my heart, I wish I had stayed at home and gone to jail for suing the hogs of the Girl Tannery, rather 1,000 times the country jail than to lie under this marble figure with wings, this granite pedestal bearing the words Prio Patria. What do they mean anyway?
Note Holmeyer ran away to the war day before Colonel Trenry swore to war and suggested Arnhem for selling hogs. But it's not for this reason he turned a soldier, coming running with Lucas Arthleton. But Coral told him never again to cross my path. So he sold the hogs and went to the war. Back of every soldier is a woman.
The earth keeps some vibration going there in your heart, and that is you. And if the people find that you can fiddle, why, fiddle you must for all your life. What do you see? A harvest of clover, or a meadow to walk through to the river? The wind's in the corn. You rub your hands for beeves hereafter ready for market, or else you hear the rustle of skirts like the girls when dancing at Little Grove. To Cooney Potter a pillar of dust, or whirling leaves meant ruinous drought. They looked to me like redhead Sammy stepping it off to tour allure. How could I till my 40 acres, not to speak of getting more? with a medley of horns, bassoons, and piccolos stirred in my brain by crows and robins. Only these, and I never started to plow in my life. And that someone did not stop in the road and take me away to a dance or picnic. I ended up with 40 acres. I ended up with a broken fiddle, and a broken laugh, and 1,000 memories, and not a single regret.
Have you seen walking in the village a man with downcast eyes and haggard face? That is my husband, who, by secret cruelty never to be told, robbed me of my youth and my beauty till at last, wrinkled, and with yellow teeth, and broken pride and shameful humility, I sank into the grave. But what think you gnaws at my husband's heart? The face of what I was, the face of what he made me. These are drawing him to the place where I lie, in death, therefore, I am avenged.
She took my strength by minutes. She took my life by hours. She drained me like a fevered moon that saps the spinning world. The days went by like shadows. The minutes wheeled like stars. She took pity from my heart and made it into smiles. She was the hunk of sculptor's clay. My secret thoughts were fingers. They blew behind her pensive brow and lined it deep with pain. They set the lips and sagged the cheeks and drooped the eye with sorrow. My soul had entered in the clay, fighting like 7 devils. It was not mine. It was not hers. She held it, but its struggles modeled a face she hated and a face I feared to see. I beat the windows, shook the bolts. I hid me in a corner, and then she died and haunted me and hunted me for life.
I was the only child of Francis Harris of Virginia and Thomas Greene of Kentucky, of valiant and honorable blood both. To them I owe all that I became, judge, member of Congress, leader in the state. From my mother, I inherited vivacity, fancy, language. From my father, will, judgment, logic. All honor to them for what service I was to the people.
I was a peasant girl from Germany, blue-eyed, rosy, happy and strong, and the first place I worked was at Thomas Greene's. On a summer's day when she was away, he stole into the kitchen and took me right in his arms and kissed me on my neck. And I turned my head, and neither of us seemed to know what happened. And I cried for what would become of me, and cried as my secret began to show. One day, Mrs. Greene said she understood, and would make no trouble for me, and, being childless, would adopt it. He had given her a farm to be still, so she hid there and sent out rumors as if it were going to happen to her. And all went well, and the child was born. Later, years passed, and I married Gus Wertman. But at political rallies, when sitters by thought I was crying at the eloquence of Hamilton Greene, that was not it. No, I wanted to say, that's my son. That's my son.
I was sick, but more than that, I was mad at the crooked police and the crooked game of life. So I wrote to the chief of police at Peoria. I am here in my girlhood home in Spoon River, gradually wasting away. But come and take me. I killed the son of the merchant prince in Madame Lou's, and the papers that said he killed himself in his home while cleaning a hunting gun lied like the devil to hush up scandal for the bribe of advertising. In my room, I shot him at Madame Lou's, as he knocked me down when I said that in spite of all the money he had, I'd see my lover that night.
I, born in Weimar, of a mother who was French and a German father, a most learned professor. Orphaned at 14 years, became a dancer known as Russian Sonia all up and down the boulevards of Paris. mistress betimes of sundry dukes and counts, and later of poor artists and poets. At 40 years passé, I sought New York, and met old Patrick Hummer in the boat, red-faced in hell, though turned his 60th year, after having sold a shipload of cattle in the German city of Hamburg. He brought me to Spoon River, and we lived here for 40 years. They thought we were married. This favorite oak tree near me is the favorite haunt of blue jays chattering all the day, and why not? For my very dust is laughing at the humorous thing called life.
When my mustache curled and my hair was black, and I wore tight trousers and a diamond stud, I was an excellent knave of hearts and took many a trick. But when the gray hairs began to appear, lo, a new generation of girls laughed at me, not fearing me, and I had no more exciting adventures, wherein I was all but shot for a heartless devil, but only drabby affairs, warmed over affairs of other days and other men, and time went on until I lived at Mayor's restaurant, partaking of sort orders, a gray, untidy, toothless, discarded, rural Don Juan. There is a mighty shade here who sings of one named Beatrice, and now I see that the force that made him great drove me to the dregs of life.
Road slave, selling shoes and gingham, flour and clothing, overalls, clothing all day long, for 14 hours a day, for 313 days, for more than 20 years, saying yes, and yes, sir, and thank you 1,000 times a day, all for $50 a month, living in this stinking room in the Rattletrap commercial, and compelled to go to Sunday school and listen to the Reverend Abner Pete 104 times a year for more than an hour at a time, because Thomas Rhodes ran the church as well as the store and the bank. So while I was tying my necktie that morning, suddenly saw myself in the glass, my hair all gray, my face like a sodden pie. So I cursed and cursed. You damned old thing, you cowardly dog, you rotten pauper, you road slave, till Roger Bogman thought I was having a fight with someone, and looked through the transom just in time to see me fall on the floor in a heap from a broken vein in my head.
There is something about death.
Like love itself.
If with someone with whom you have known passion,
and the glow of youthful love,
you also,
after years of life together,
feel the sinking of the fire,
and thus fade away together.
Gradually,
faintly,
delicately, as it were in each other's arms,
passing from the familiar room.
That is the power of unison between souls.
Like love itself.
They got me into Sunday school in Spoon River and tried to get me to drop Confucius for Jesus. I could have been no worse off if I had tried to get them to drop Jesus for Confucius. For without any warning, and as if it were a prank and sneaking up behind me, Harry Wiley, the minister's son, caved my ribs into my lungs with a blow of his fist. Now I shall never sleep with my ancestors in Pekin, and no children shall worship at my grave.
How many times during the 20 years I was your leader, friends of Spoon River, did you neglect the convention and caucus and leave the burden unto my hands of guarding and saving the people's cause? Sometimes because you were ill or your grandmother was ill, or else you said, all will be well, he fights for us. We have nothing to do but follow. But oh, how you cursed me when I fell, and cursed me saying I had betrayed you. And leaving the caucus room for a moment, the people's enemies there watched and waited for their chance to destroy the sacred rights of the people. You common rabble! I left the caucus to go to the urinal.
Mr. Kessler, was in the army. He just took Sarah's pension and sat in the corner talking politics, or sat at home reading Grant's memoirs, and explored our family by washing, learned the secrets of all people, from the curtains, counterpane, shirts and skirts, to things that knew rolled at length, people all prospering or falling back, and rents and patches lying with time, with other needles and face decay, and their stains that baffle soap, and their colors run inside of you, flame speed with wearing a dress, handkerchiefs, napery had a secret laundress life. Knows all about it, and I went to all his funerals holding Spoon River, where I never saw a dead face without thinking it was something washed and ironed.
Well, don't you see, this was the way of it. We bought the farm with what he inherited, and his father's brothers and sisters accused him of poisoning his father's mind against the rest of them. And we never had any peace without treasure. The rain took the cattle, and the crops failed, and lightning struck the granary. So we mortgaged the farm to keep going. He grew silent and was worried all the time, and some of his brothers and sisters refused to speak to us, taking sides with the neighbors, and I had no place to turn, as one may say to himself at an earlier time in life. No matter, so-and-so is my friend, or I can shake this off with a little trip to Decatur. Then the dreadfulest smells infested the rooms, so I set fire to the beds, and the old witch house went up in a roar of flame, as I danced in the yard with waving arms, and he wept like a freezing steer.
I have studied many times the marble which was chiseled for me, a boat with a furled sail at rest on a harbor. In truth, it pictures not my destination, but my life. For love was offered me, and I shrank from its disillusionment. Sorrow called to me, but I was afraid. Ambition knocked at my door, but I dreaded chances, yet all the while I hungered for meaning in my life. And now I know that we must lift the sails and catch the winds of destiny wherever they drive the boat. To put meaning in one's life may end in madness, but life without meaning is the torture of restlessness and vague desire. It is a boat, longing for the sea and yet afraid.
I was just turned 21, and Henry Phipps, the Sunday school superintendent, made a speech in Bindle's Opera House. "The honor of the flag must be upheld," he said, "whether it be assailed by a barbarous tribe of Tagalogs or the greatest power in Europe." And we cheered and cheered the speech and the flag that he waved as he spoke. And I went to war in spite of my father, and followed the flag till I saw it raised by our camp in a rice field near Manila, and all of us cheered and cheered it. But there were flies and poisonous things, and there was the sickening putrid food, and the cruel heat, and the deadly water, and the smell of the trench just back of the tents where the soldiers went to empty themselves. And there were beastly acts between ourselves or alone, with bullying, hatred, degradation among us, days of loathing and nights of fear, to the hour of charge to the steaming swamp, following the flag, till I fell with a scream, shot through the guts. Now there's a flag over me in Spoon River. A flag. A flag.
I was only 8 years old, and before I knew what it meant, I had no words for it, except that I told Mother, and Father would have killed Charlie, who was a big boy, 15 years old, except for his mother. Nevertheless, the story clung to me, but the man who married me, a widower of 35, was new to Spoon River and had not heard it until 2 years after we were married. Then he considered himself cheated, and the village agreed with him that I was not really a virgin. Well, he deserted me, and I died that following winter.
He ran away and was gone for a year, and when he came back, he told me the silly story of being kidnapped by pirates on Lake Michigan and kept in chains so he could not write me. I pretended to believe it, though I knew very well what he was doing, that he had met the milliner, Mrs. Williams, when she came into the city to buy goods, as she said. But a promise is a promise, and marriage is marriage. Out of respect for my own character, I refused to be drawn into a divorce by the scheme of a husband who had merely grown tired of his marital vow and duty.
If you in the village think that my work was a good one, who stopped all the saloons and playing at cards and hailed old Daisy Fraser before Justice Arnett, and many crusaded the purge of the people of sin. Why do you let the milliner's daughter Dora and the worthless son of Benjamin Pintier nightly make my grave their unholy pillow?
I wrote him a letter asking him for all time's sake to discharge my sick boy in the army, but maybe he couldn't read it. Then I went to town and had James Garber, who wrote beautifully, write him a letter, but maybe that got lost in the mails. So I traveled all the way to Washington. I was more than an hour finding the White House, and when I finally found it, they turned me away, hiding their smiles. So then I thought, oh well, he ain't the same as when I boarded him and when he and my husband would work together. And all of us would call him Abe there in Menard. As a last attempt, I turned to a guard and said, hi, can you please let him know that old Aunt Hannah Armstrong from Illinois has come to see him about her sick boy in the army? Thank you. And just like that, they let me in. And when he saw me, he broke in a laugh and he dropped his business as president. And he wrote in his own hand Doug's discharge, talking the while of the early days and telling stories.
At first you will not know what they mean, and you may never know, and we may never tell you. These sudden flashes in your soul, like lambent lightning on snowy clouds at midnight when the moon is full. They come in solitude. Perhaps you sit with a friend, and all at once a silence falls on speech, and his eyes, without a flicker, glow at you. You two have seen the secret together. He sees it in you and you in him. And there you sit, thrilling lest the mystery stand before you and strike you dead with the splendor like the sun's. Be brave. All souls who have such visions as your body's alive as mine is dead, you're catching a little whiff of the ether reserved for God himself.
There will now be a 10-minute intermission.
"4 o'clock in late October, I sat alone in the country schoolhouse, back from the road mid stricken fields, and an eddy of wind blew leaves on the pane and crooned in the flue of the cannon stove. In an idle mood, I was running the planchette. All at once, my wrist grew limp, and my hand moved rapidly over the board till the name of Charles Guiteau was spelled, who threatened to materialize before me. I rose and fled from the room, bareheaded, into the dusk, afraid of my gift. And after that, the spirits swarmed. Chaucer, Caesar, Poe and Marlowe, Cleopatra and Mrs. Surratt. Everywhere I went, mere trifling twaddle. Spoon River agreed. You talk nonsense to children, don't you? And suppose I see what you never saw and never heard of and had no word for. I must talk nonsense when you ask me what it is I see.
Almost the shell of a woman after the surgeon's knife, and almost a year to creep back into my seeming self, till the dawn of our wedding decennial found me, my seeming self, again. We walked the forest together, by a path of soundless moss and turf, but I could not look in your eyes, and you could not look in mine, for such sorrow was ours, the beginning of gray in your hair, and I but a shell of myself. And what did we talk of? Sky and water, anything most to hide our thoughts. And then your gift, wild roses, set on the table to grace our dinner. Poor heart, how bravely you struggled to imagine and live a remembered rapture. Then my spirit drooped as the night came on, and you left me alone in my room for a while, as you did when I was a bride. Poor heart. And I looked in the mirror. Something said, one should be all dead when one is half dead. Nor ever mock life, nor ever cheat love. And I did it, looking there in the mirror. Dear, have you ever understood?
I wanted to go away to college, but rich Aunt Persis wouldn't help me. So I made gardens and raked the lawns and bought John Alden's books with my makings. I wanted to marry Delia Prickett, but how could I do it with what I earned? And there's that Aunt Persis, more than 70, half dead, in a wheelchair, with her throat so paralyzed when she ate, the soup ran out her mouth like a duck. Or gourmand yet. Investing her income in mortgages, fretting all her time over her notes and rents and papers. That day, I was sawing wood for her and reading Prideaux in between. I went inside for a drink of water. And there's that Aunt Persis, asleep. Prideaux was on the table, a bottle of chloroform on the book. She used that sometimes for her aching tooth. So I poured the chloroform onto a handkerchief and held it to her nose till she died. Oh, Delia, Delia, you and Prideaux steadied my hand. And the coroner said she had died of heart failure. I got the money and married Delia. A joke on you, Spoon River?
Reverend Wiley advised me not to divorce him for the sake of the children, and Judge Somers told him the same. So, we stepped to the end of the path. But you see, 2 of the children thought he was right, and 2 of the children thought I was right. The 2 who sided with him would blame me, and the 2 who sided with him with me would blame him. And they'd all grieve for the one they sided with, all of them torn with the guilt of judging and tortured in soul because they could not admire equally him and me. Now, every gardener knows that plants grown in cellars or under stones are twisted and yellow and weak, and no mother would let her baby suck diseased milk from her breast. Yet, preachers and judges advise the raising of souls where there is no sunlight, but only twilight, no warmth, but only dampness and cold. Preachers and judges.
Ye young debaters over the doctrine of the soul's immortality, I who lie here was the village atheist, talkative, contentious, versed in the arguments of the infidels. But through a long sickness, coughing myself to death, I read the Upanishads and the poetry of Jesus, and they lighted a torch of hope and intuition that the shadow guiding me swiftly through the caverns of darkness could not extinguish. Listen to me, ye who live in the senses and think through the senses only. Immortality is not a gift. Immortality is an achievement, and only those who strive mightily shall possess it.
Your red blossoms amid green leaves are drooping, beautiful geranium. But you do not ask for water. You cannot speak. You do not need to speak. Everyone knows that you are dying of thirst, yet they do not bring water. They pass on, saying the geranium wants water. And I, who had happiness to share, and longed to share your happiness, I who loved you, Spoon River, and craved your love, withered before your eyes, Spoon River. Thirsting, voiceless from chasteness of soul to ask you for love, you who knew and saw me perish before you, like this geranium, which someone has planted over me and left to die.
With our hearts like spring suns, we walked as often before the April fields of starlight signals the viewless gods, the darkness. Under the cliffs, our trysting place in the woods where the brook turns. How did paths from wooing, like notes of music run together into winning, the inspired improvisation of love. But to put back as our canticle ended, the rapt enchantment of the flesh, which our souls swooned down, where time was not, nor space, nor ourselves, annihilated in love. Blazing behind with ring with lamps, and I stand with our secret mocking self, and hiding himself amid flowers and mandolins. Stared at between salad and coffee, and to see him tremble and feel myself, president, as one who signs a bond, not flowing with gifts and pledges heaped, with rosy hands over his brow. And then, oh night, deliberate and lovely, with all our wooing, balled up for the winning, a chosen room that's not to all. Next day sat the listless, almost cold, so strangely changed, wondering why I wept, till a sick of kindness fair and voluptuous madness, sees us make a pact of death, a stalk of earth's fear, frail as starlight, one to draw an inspiration stream. Next time the giving birth of fell in St. Francis, sometimes they pass, for I and the little brother come clearly face to face. Through a circle of brother after run, made of the seed and soil, and they feel cold rain fall, but only earth's fear, only heaven knows to grow the seed. Nuptial chamber on the soil, flaming the stream again, gave me a trial, save me, Shelley.
I was among multitudes of children dancing at the foot of a mountain. A breeze blew out of the east and swept them as leaves, driving some up the slopes. All was changed. Here were flying lights and mystic moons and dream music. Then a cloud fell upon us, and when it lifted, all was changed. I was now amid multitudes who were wrangling. Then, a figure in shimmering gold, and one with a trumpet and one with a scepter stood before me. They mocked me and danced a rigadoon and vanished. All was changed again. Out of a bower of poppies, a woman bared her breasts and lifted her open mouth to mine. I kissed her. The taste of her lips was like salt, and she left blood on my lips. I fell, exhausted. I arose and ascended higher, but a mist as from an iceberg clouded my steps. I was cold and in pain, Then the sun streamed on me again, and I saw the mist below me hiding all below them, and above me was the soundless air pierced by a cone of ice, over which hung a solitary star. A shudder of ecstasy, a shudder of fear ran through me, but I could not return to the slopes. Nay, I wished not to return, for the spent waves of the symphony of freedom lapped the ethereal cliffs about me. Therefore, I climbed to the pinnacle. I flung away my staff. I touched the star with my outstretched hand, and I vanished utterly. For the mountain delivers to infinite truth, whosoever touches the star.
Henry got me with child, knowing full well that I could not bring forth life without losing my own. Therefore in my youth I had entered the portals of dust. Traveler, it is believed in the village where I live that Henry loved me with a husband's love. Well, I proclaim from the dust that he slew me to gratify his hatred.
My wife lost her health until she dwindled into a scarce 90 pounds. Then the woman whom the men styled Cleopatra came along. We married ones, all broke our vows, myself among the rest. Years passed one by one. Death claimed them all in some hideous form. I was borne along by dream, so God's particular grace for me. And I began to write, reams on reams of the second coming of Christ. And Christ came to me and said, "Go to the church and stand before the congregation and confess your sin." But as I stood up and began to speak, I saw my little girl who was sitting in the front seat, my little girl who was born blind. After that, all was blackness.
We stand about this place, we the memories, and shade our eyes because we dread to read. June 17th, 1884, aged 21 years and 3 days, and all things are changed. And we the memories, stand here for ourselves alone, for no eye marks us or would know why we are here. Your husband is dead, your sister lives far away, your father is bent with age. He has forgotten you. He scarcely leaves the house anymore. No one remembers your exquisite face, your lyric voice, how you sang even on the morning you were stricken with piercing sweetness and thrilling sorrow, as the advent of the child which died with you. It is all forgotten, save by us, the memories, who are forgotten by the world. Only the burning sun and the quiet stars are the same. And we the memories, stand here for ourselves alone. Our eyes closed with the weariness of tears, in immeasurable weariness.
Here I lie, close to the grave of old Bill Pearsall, who grew rich trading with the Indians, and who afterwards took the bankrupt law and emerged from it richer than ever. Beholding how old Bill and others grew in wealth, I robbed a traveler one night near Proctor's Grove, killing him unwittingly while doing so, for which I was tried and hanged. That was my way of going into bankruptcy. Now we who took the bankrupt law in our respective ways sleep peacefully side by side.
Nothing in life is alien to you. I was a penniless girl from someone who stepped off the morning train in Spoon River. All the houses stood before me with closed doors and drawn shades. I was barred out. I had no place or part in any of them, and I walked past the old McNeely mansion, a castle of stone mid walks and gardens, with workmen about the place on guard, and the county and state upholding it for its lordly owner, full of pride. I was so hungry I had a vision. I saw a pair of scissors dip from the sky like the beam of a dredge and cut the house into like a curtain. But at the commercial, I saw a man who winked at me as I asked for work. It was Walsh McNeely's son. He proved the link in the chain of title to half my ownership of the mansion. The breach of promise suit. The scissors. So, you see, the house from the day that I was born was only waiting for me.
It 'Twas moonlight, and the earth sparkled with new-fallen frost. It was midnight, and not a soul abroad. Out of the chimney of the courthouse, a gray hound of smoke leapt and chased the northwest wind. I carried a ladder to the landing of the stairs of the portico and leaned it against the frame of the trapdoor. I crawled under the roof and amid the rafters, and flung among the seasoned timbers a lighted handful of oil-soaked waste. Then I came down and slunk away. In a little while, the fire bell rang, clang, 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 and the Spoon River Ladder Company came with a dozen buckets and began to pour water on the glorious bonfire, growing hotter, higher, and brighter, until the walls crashed in and the limestone columns where Lincoln stood crashed like trees when the woodman fells them. When I came back from Joliet, there was a new courthouse with a dome, where I was punished like all who destroy the past for the sake of the future.
Over and over, they used to ask me, while buying the wine or the beer, in Peoria first, later in Chicago, Denver, Frisco, New York, wherever I lived, how I happened to lead the life, and what was the start of it. Well, I told them, a silk dress and a promise of marriage from a rich man. It was Lucius Atherton. That was not really it at all. Suppose a boy steals an apple from the tray at the grocery store, and they all begin to call him a thief. The editor, minister, judge, and all the people. A thief, a thief, a thief wherever he goes, and he can't get work, and he can't get bread without stealing it. Why? The boy will steal. It's the way the people regard the theft of the apple that makes the boy what he is.
Did you ever hear Editor Whedon giving to the public treasury any of the money he received for supporting candidates for office, or for writing up the canning factory to get people to invest, or for suppressing the facts about things when it was rotten and ready to break? Did you ever hear of the circuit judge helping anyone except the Q Railroad or the bankers? Or did Reverend Pete or Reverend Sibby give any part of their salary earned by keeping still or speaking out as leaders wish them to do to the building of the waterworks? But I, Daisy Fraser, who always passed along the streets through rows of nods and smiles and caws and words such as "there she goes," was never taken before Justice Arnott without contributing $10 in cost to the school fund of Spoon River.
You'd not believe me, would you? That I came from good Welsh stock? That I was purer-blooded than the New Englanders and Virginians of Spoon River? You'd not believe that I'd been to school and read some books. You saw me only as a run-down man with matted hair and a beard and ragged clothes. Sometimes a man's life turns into a cancer from being bruised and continually bruised until he turns into a purplish mass, like growths on stalks of corn. Here was I, a carpenter, mired in a bog of life into which I walked thinking it was a meadow, with a slattern for a wife, and poor Minerva, my daughter, whom you tormented and drove to death. So I crept like a snail through the days of my life. No longer you hear my footsteps resounding on the hollow sidewalk, going to the grocery store for a little cornmeal and a nickel's worth of bacon.
I am Minerva, the village poetess, hooted at, jeered at by the yahoos of the street for my heavy body, cock eye, and rolling walk. And all the more after Butch Weldy captured me after a brutal hunt. He left me to my fate with Dr. Myers. And I sank into death, growing numb from the feet up, like one stepping deeper and deeper into a stream of ice. Will someone go to the village newspaper and gather into a book the verses I wrote? I thirsted so for love. I hungered so for life.
No other man, unless it was Doc Hill, did more for the people in this town than I. And all the weak, the halt, the improvident, and those who could not pay flocked to me. I was good-hearted, easy Dr. Myers. I was happy, healthy, in comfortable fortune, blessed with a congenial mate, my children raised, all wedded, doing well in the world. And then one night, Minerva, the poetess, came to me in her trouble crying. I tried to help her out. She died. They indicated me. The newspapers disgraced me. My wife perished of a broken heart, and pneumonia finished me.
He protested all his life long. The newspapers lied about him vilinously, that he was not at fault from a nervous fall, but only tried to help her. Poor soul, so sunk in sin he could not see that even trying to help her, as he called it, he had broken the law, human and divine. Passers-by, an ancient admonition to you, if your ways be ways of pleasantness, and all your pathways peace. Love God and keep his commandments.
The secret of the stars, gravitation. The secret of the earth, layers of rock. The secret of soil, to receive seed. The secret of the seed, the germ. The secret of man, the sower. The secret of woman, the soil. My secret, under a mound that you shall never find.
Not character, not fortitude, not patience, or mine. The which the village thought I had, in bearing with my wife, while preaching on, doing the work God chose for me. I loathed her as a termagant, as a wanton. I knew of her adulteries, every one. But even so, if I divorced the woman, I must forsake the ministry. Therefore, to do God's work and have it crop, I bore with her. So I lied to myself. I lied to Spoon River. Yet I tried lecturing, ran for legislature, canvassed for books, with just the thought in mind, if I make money thus, I will divorce her.
I leaned against the mantel, sick, thinking of my failure and looking into the absent, weak from the noonday heat. The church bell sounded mournfully from far away. I heard the cry of a baby in the coffin of John Arnell, bedridden, feverish, dying. The violent voice of my wife, "Watch out, the potatoes are burning." I smelled them. There was an irresistible disgust. I pulled the trigger. Blackness, light, unspeakable regret, fumbling for the words again. Too late, thus I came here. With lungs for breathing, one cannot breathe here with lungs. Though one must breathe, of what use is it to rid oneself of the world, if no one's soul may ever escape the eternal destiny of life?
From Brindle's Opera House in the Village to Broadway is a great step. But try to take it. My ambition fired. When 68 sing easily and played in the village, brought fire into coming. Romantic after and enthralled my soul. True. That's all about home. A broken failure. When Ralph appeared in New York, gleaming in the city. Goliath broke him also. And plus his silence, there are no kindness spirits. How much to say could stand amid these pathos of these quiet fields and read these words?
My name used to be in the papers daily, as having dined somewhere, or traveled somewhere, or rented a house in Paris where I entertained the nobility. I was forever eating, or traveling, or taking the cure at Baden-Baden. Now I'm here to do honor to Spoon River. Here beside, family whence I sprang. No one cares now where I dined, or lived, or whom I entertained, or how often I took the cure at Baden-Baden.
Out of a cell into this darkened space. The end at 25. My tongue cannot speak what stirred within me, and the village thought me a fool! Yet, from the beginning, there was a clear, very clear purpose in my soul. which drove me on trying to memorize the Encyclopedia Britannica.
If the excursion train to Peoria had just been wrecked, I might have escaped with my life. Certainly I should have escaped this place, but as it was burned as well, they mistook me for John Allen, who was sent to the Hebrew Cemetery in Chicago, and John for me. So I lie here. It was bad enough to run a clothing store in this town, but to be buried here? Ugh.
I went to the dances at Chandlerville and played Snap Out at Winchester. One time we changed partners, driving home in the moonlight of middle June. And then I found Davis. We were married and lived together for 70 years, enjoying working, raising the 12 children, 8 of whom we lost. Ere I had reached the age of 60, I spun, I wove, I kept the house, I nursed the sick. I made the garden, and for holiday rambled over the fields where sang the larks, and gathering many a flower and many a medicinal weed, shouting to the wooded hills, singing to the green valleys. At 96, I had lived enough, that is all, and passed to a sweet repose. What is this I hear of anger and discontent, and drooping hopes? Degenerate sons and daughters, life is too strong for you. It takes life to love life.
Seeds in a dry pod, tick, 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 like mites in a quail, faint iambics that the full breeze wakens, and the pine tree makes a symphony thereof. Triolets, villanelles, rondelles, rondelles, ballads by the same score with the same old thought. The snows and roses of yesterday are vanished, and what is love but a rose that fades? Life all around me here in the village. Comedy, tragedy, valor, and truth. Courage, constancy, heroism, failure. And all in the loom. And oh, what patterns! Meadows, woodlands, streams, and rivers. Blind to all of it all my life long. Seeds in a dry pod. Tick, 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 tick. What little iambics, while Homer and Whitman roared in the pines?
Out of me, unworthy and unknown, the vibrations of deathless music, with malice towards none, with charity for all. Out of me, forgiveness of millions towards millions, and the beneficent face of a nation shining with justice and truth. I am Anne Rutledge, who sleep beneath these weeds, beloved in life of Abraham Lincoln, wedded to him, not through union, but through separation. Bloom forever, O Republic, from the dust of my bosom.
I was not beloved of the villagers, but all because I spoke my mind, and met those who transgressed against me with plain remonstrance, hiding nor nurturing, nor secret griefs nor grudges. It is the act of the Spartan boy that is greatly praised, who hid the wolf under his cloak and let it devour him uncomplainingly. It is braver, I think, to snatch the wolf forth, and fight him openly, even in the streets, amidst the dust and howls of pain. The tongue may be an unruly member, but silence is what poisons the soul. Berate me who will, I am content.